Hello and welcome to our official book club for international bestseller Magdalene Rising, Feminine Leaders Guided by Her Fierce and Unconditional Wisdom. My name is Annabelle Hart. I am an international bestselling author, medicine woman, and teacher of embodied Shakti leadership facilitator training for women. And it is my pleasure to be here with you today and to read my chapter for you, which is quite a treat when it comes direct through the author's transmission. And knowing me, I'll probably weave in some other experiences as we flow. I'm feeling to explore this very spontaneously and intuitively. So before we get started, I really invite you to get cozy with me. I have a cushion, I'm set up on the floor, I have these fairy lights, and I'm just really, inviting in presence and peace with each of you as we share this experience today. If you would like to grab a cup of tea, a cup of cacao, whatever is going to help you soften and settle into your heart space and to really receive that warmth and that loving presence as we flow through this experience. You may like to have a journal and a pen with you as well. So see what feels true for you, and you can pause here and get yourself sorted and then come back and meet me here. So I have with me the paperback edition of Magdalene Rising, and this is really exciting. This is the first multi-author book that I contributed to. And it was quite funny because on Facebook, they gave me a reminder of a memory, which was the same day that we launched Isis, Mother of Magic, Modern Goddesses Who Embody Her Eternal Grace and Power. This was my fourth multi-author book, which just recently launched. And that same day, a year earlier, was when I was accepted into be a contributing author for Magdalene Rising. So it's surreal to look at the journey from, just over a year ago to where I was to where I am now is so surreal. I never imagined that it would journey this far. So I'm really excited to be sharing this book with you all today, and in particular, my chapter. Now, before we dive into Art of Alchemy, Transforming Traumas into Treasures, I will offer a loving warning or forewarning. If you haven't tuned in with my chapter before, you may find it confronting. It may feel triggering, and it may activate different parts of you to be with. Some of the stories that I share from childhood and through different phases of my life's journey in this body, have really been a lot to manage in myself. And I'm not the only one. There are many, many, many others out there who have endured such experiences similar to my own, maybe very different, and yet there can be very similar patterns that play out. So I'm going to invite you, as we receive this chapter together today, to just be present with your breath, with your body. Notice what is surfacing for you. And if anything becomes too much, if it overwhelms you, if it feels really uncomfortable, I'm actually going to invite you to lean into that with your breath. And just through those full inhalations and the deep restorative exhalations, invite you back here now in this moment that we're sharing together. And of course, you have your journal and pens and paper if you need to write and just allow that flow to shift through you. That can be a really beautiful way to shift the energies. This has definitely been supportive for me, obviously. I actually dreamt of being an author since I was a little girl. So writing has been a key piece of the puzzle for me along the way. And here we are. So let's begin together. Enchanted Heart of the Jacaranda Tree. And I would love to share with you here that this beautiful jacaranda tree, before we go into this particular piece of the chapter, is a tree that was outside my bedroom as a child. And I used to love gazing into the heart of the jacaranda tree and off into the stars. And I'm sure I'll share that with you in my chapter. But this tree is so very symbolic for me. And it actually went on to become the logo for Heart Awakening. This was the first business model that I brought through, and I had a beautiful friend from Denmark. She hand painted this jacaranda tree for me, which was so stunning. And then my graphic designer was able to bring that into the virtual reality. And yeah, it just has a very, very dear meaning for me, this jacaranda tree. And yeah, I felt to share that little background with you. Okay, so let's take a big breath in and out. I lay in my bed, cocooned by my teddy bears, hoping they will protect me from the demons of the dark night. Even with all of them tightly confined to my body, like a shield of armor, it isn't enough. And those eerie sensations creep into the stillness and silence of deep darkness. I breathe shallow and soundless, sometimes not at all, playing dead so I don't stir the sinister demons who surreptitiously move closer towards me. My plan fails. The inevitable ritual of torturous trickery begins yet again. It's not safe here. I escape this body I supposedly inhabit, leaving it there to endure the deepest and darkest, most twisted tales, which are forever tattooed into every layer of my being. I apologize if you can hear the dog next door barking. He's just making himself known. In this enchanted world, far from my physical body, I dream of feeling safe to be in this body and earth. I dream of feeling sincerely loved, powerfully protected, and of being able to trust in people, especially those nearest and dearest to me. I dream of becoming a writer and a speaker who courageously shares these twisted tales and the compassionate endurance encompassed in such a young girl to not only survive these experiences, but the admirable aptitude to also thrive. I dream of being able to educate and encourage others so they need not experience what I and so many others tolerated. I dream of being able to support them to enrich, expand, and evolve beyond their wildest dreams, to courageously create the life they dream of experiencing beyond any binds that would try to limit their light. Eventually, I am encouraged back into the body when it's safe to land there again. I lightly pull my blinds back so I can peek my head underneath and gaze out the window into the enchanted heart of the jacaranda tree. I watch in wonder as it softly sways in the breeze of this summer's night. Gazing beyond, I am entranced in the vastness of the night sky. Grandmother Moon beaming her bright, ancient beauty and wisdom brightly towards me. The Milky Way streaming with the river of sparkly starlights that shimmer and shine an iridescent silver luminosity which pierces the veil of deep darkness. Galaxies grow grandiosely and shooting stars launch their light ever so bright, offering me hope in my heart as I make a wish. In the sorrows of such sadness, I yearn to return to where I belong, not to be here where torturesome things happen to children. Many memories like this still surface as clear as daylight. The sensations of what my body survived in all those years still shifts through me from time to time. Only now, rather than looking at that little girl as though she were a victim, I look at her in awe and admiration for her inspiring courage and compassion to create a life beyond pain and into power, beyond wounds and into wisdom, beyond traumas and into treasures. I am amazed that these dreams held in the enchanted heart of a young girl are finally being actualized. Everything she endured was for a powerful purpose. Let's just take a moment to pause, reconnect with your breath if you have strayed from that deepness and that fullness of your breath, and just to really invite in that presence with your body here and now. Notice what may be moving through you physically, emotionally, any thought patterns that are shifting through in the psychological realm, and energetically what is here in your field if you can sense what's alive for you. So as I've shared this much of the chapter so far, you might find that some of what I share may feel similar to some of your own experiences. It may feel so outrageous for others that it's almost inconceivable that such a thing could be happening to children in our societies around the world. So whatever end of the spectrum or wherever along that spectrum you find yourself, whether you know what I'm speaking of because you have also endured similarly, or whether you are just so confronted by what I'm speaking to that it's almost like, you know, you kind of just want to bury your head in the sand or turn a blind eye. It's too much, you know. Wherever you find yourself on the spectrum, please know that it's okay, that it's just, that it's valid, and to really just invite you all the way through this chapter. Keep connecting with your breath, be here in your body now, and just be witness. Observe any sensations that are here for you. Let's keep reading, shall we? Beware of the surreptitious serpent entering the Garden of Eden. Another malicious memory surfaces. We are playing together on the floor. I see myself lying on my back. Behind me, I am entranced by the sight out of my eastern bedroom window. I gaze into the light of day and the infamous blue sky of Australia. The calming colour, a mirror reflection of my bedroom walls. Quite the paradox, given the twisted tales which eventuated in that space. I'm not sure what triggers him, only I know it's suddenly not safe for me to be in my body anymore. By this point, I am well accustomed to dissociating from the physical body. Again, leaving it there to endure yet another traumatizing and terrorizing enslavement of sexual abuse. My dad has been over in the shed working tirelessly. The back door slams as he stomps into the house, yelling out for me. The boy, now startled, stops his malicious molestation of my body. I'm jarringly snapped back into this reality, trying to yell for help. The boy quickly smothers and suffocates my lips closed so that I can barely breathe, let alone scream for Dad's discipline to domineer these vicious violations. Don't say anything to anyone about this or I'll fucking kill you. These are the threatening words from this young boy who is several years older than me and therefore knows better than to treat a young girl like this. I struggle to share how suffocating these words have felt in every layer of my being from this day forth. There have been many, countless nightmares in both dream and waking state where I am scarred from not being able to scream for help. The sweaty and repulsive hand is removed from my mouth. I gasp for air, still smelling that sickening shame and despicable disgust imprinted into every layer of my being. I seem to be dressing myself, though I'm not fully back yet. I hear Dad calling louder, wondering where I am. The boy opens the door, since I'm not yet tall enough to reach the handle, and we surface shamefully. Dad is standing opposing us down the hallway, asking, "What have you been doing?" After the terrorizing threats I've just been silenced with, I'm not game to look my father in the eyes, nor the boy, to ask what lie we should tell, excuse me, to keep our little secret safe. Instead, I look down, staying silent. The boy responds with nothing, silencing Dad's discerning look. I feel the young boy glaring at me energetically in an attack to keep me quiet. Eventually, I meet Dad's eyes, hoping he'll hear me telepathically, see the sorrows in my evasive eyes, or at least question such a suppressed smile across my lips. Before we go on, I actually want to share with you a memory that's just come through as I was reading this to you. I remember once a godmother of mine, she's a very close family friend, and I must have been around about the age of 10 or 11 at this time of my life. And I used to really struggle to connect eye to eye with people. I had a lot of trouble with, making eye contact with any human, but especially with adults. I found it quite intimidating, and I also found it, as I'm reading this to you, I'm seeing that part of me and knowing how she was just so scared, because if I made eye contact with someone, especially an adult, would they actually see me? Would they see the little girl in me who was suffering immensely at that time of my life? And what would happen if they actually saw me? How would my life be? Would I have stayed in those circumstances and situations, or would I have been, pulled from that situation and have a completely different life? And I remember one day she called me out, and my godmother, she was saying, you need to look people in the eye. And if I'm talking to you, you need to look at me. And it was very intimidating. And I remember really not liking it, that she was calling me out for not being able to hold eye contact. And I can see why she was bringing that forward for me. Like, it is important to meet eye to eye with others we're engaging with. It's something I'm mindful, even in this scenario of us connecting through the virtual means of technology. And yeah, it really brings forth this question, because if you're an adult tuning in now, maybe you can look back at different parts of your childhood where you maybe felt intimidated to make eye contact with adults or with others. And I wonder, if that was there for you, then why was it there for you? What made you feel shy or scared or ashamed to meet eye to eye with another human? I believe it's going to sound cheesy for some, but I really believe the eyes are the windows to the soul. This is how we can really meet one another in such an intimate way through eye contact. And, if you're an adult now and you have children of your own or children that are around you, do they have this tendency to have evasive eyes and not want to look directly at another? And if so, maybe, yes, there's gentle ways to call them into hey, it's okay to meet me eye to eye here. Like I'm safe to connect if you genuinely are feeling that way. And if they are feeling safe to connect with you in such a way, but to also question maybe why are they scared to be seen? And it may not be that my own experiences are playing out for this child of yours or the children around you, or for your inner child, if you relate with what I'm sharing. It could be a completely different scenario, a completely different story that is unique to you, if this is about your inner child, or it could be about the other children around you. And just to be curious, why is this inner child or children not feeling safe to be seen? And rather than criticizing them for not feeling safe to be seen, maybe inviting an inner dialogue. If it's with your inner child, if it's with your, your child or the children around you, inviting that dialogue to open so that we can learn from one another around why it's not feeling safe for this child to be seen. Yeah. This is why we're flowing spontaneously with this, because I have not even read this chapter since the paperback edition came through. And that was a long time ago, last year. So it's really surreal for me to dive into this chapter with you. And I'm really grateful for that memory coming through and the contemplations that are welcomed as a result of that. So let's continue. Big breath in and a full breath out. This is one of many malevolent memories embedded from such experiences. Through all of this, one saving grace was to simply breathe and be with the Great Mother, Mother Earth, to feel safe and sound, secure and supported, even in some of my most destabilizing years. Thanks to the intimacy of my connection with the earth and her creatures, I felt lovingly held and heard. My mother was often fraught with tending to my elder brother's needs, given that he negotiated varying disabilities, and so she wasn't always around or available. Admittedly, sometimes this bothered me, but I also saw it as a blessing in disguise, because honestly, even if she had been able to truly see and hear me, would I have let myself be fully seen and heard? It took me decades to cultivate the courage to speak up. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't challenged now in writing this chapter. Though it may be confronting at times, it is also tremendously liberating. In moments where I feel distressed, I connect with the earth, encouraging and empowering myself along this daring path of liberation through sharing one's story of transforming traumas into treasures. And again, there's a lot of people who, especially family and family friends, who have been tuning in with my chapters for these multi-author books, and hopefully soon to come my solo book journey as well. And many have been so confronted that they've actually disconnected all communication with me. And it's been a really interesting experience. Some have even criticized or ostracized as well. And that's okay. Everyone's entitled to receive this experience through their own perception and in their own way. But this is why I choose to share my story. And stories, there are many. Yeah, in 27 years of life, it's been that's only a short frame, and yet there's been like quite a lot that I've experienced. And I feel blessed for this because I know that I have the courage to share these stories, because I know that it's, yes, it is about liberating self, me personally, but it is about liberating, you know, maybe our ancestors, if this has been passed down from generation to generation, which oftentimes it is, but also the collective. There are so many, even men, women, and children experiencing this around the world. So if I can have the courage to share my truth and my stories with you all, imagine how many people that can support. And it's timeless. So it's a really, like, for anyone out there who might have stories similar to my own, or maybe very different stories, but a similar experience that you're navigating inside yourself, like it could be anxiety, depression, we're going to come to all of that later. You know, I really invite you to step into that courage and to share yourself, because yeah, it's about you stepping into your power. But as you step into your power, imagine how igniting that and inspiring that is for all of those around you. So I want to welcome that in for each of us, and let's continue. Oh yes, another breath. Ready to lay it all to rest. Another recollection arises. There has been a scorching fight in the family, and I find myself storming off towards the boundary of the property, heading for the road. I sit in the middle of the road in Sukhasana, cross-legged position. Looking into the direction of west, I wait for the inevitable trucks to drive down our road. In a flood of emotions, I wait to greet my death, wondering what the fuck the point of this life is. Eventually, I see a truck coming on the horizon. I watch as it comes closer and closer towards me, now at the other end of the property. I begin to wonder, what if there is more to this existence than what currently meets the eyes? What if all this heartache is happening for a powerful purpose? What if someday I can truly be happy and create a significant change in this world? The truck is closing in on me now. At the very last moment, I jump to my feet, swiftly moving to the side of the road. I watch this truck zoom past me, feeling the force of wind powerfully sweep across my small body. This truckie seems unaware of what he and I nearly encountered together, or perhaps just doesn't care. I gaze into the east, watching the truck gain distance between us. I sigh my sorrows with a heavy heart, turning to face the family home. I walk my bare feet back to the house, continuing to contemplate. What if there is more to this existence than what currently meets the eyes? No one notices my absence, nor are they aware of the deep initiation I just experienced. Greetings, sister or mother jaguar of the West, ready to lay it all to rest. Befriending death and the courage I cultivated to contemplate a simple what if, I wonder if I should return to the road, since no one seems to notice nor seems to care of my absence. But I feel a credible change in my being after this first of many near encounters with death. A fierce fire ignited within, watching that truckie drive into the east. So rather than turning to the road, I make a promise to myself and the universe. No matter what is to come from here on in, I won't let that inner fire die. That's not to say it necessarily got any easier after that. We haven't got to the stories yet about institutional abuse, extreme dissociation to the point of or extent of amnesia. That was at the age of 10. Delving deeper into depression, grotesque grief through the loss of my brother and grandfather at the age of 14, and later the brutal death of my grandmother, alongside an assortment of addictions that kept me in self-sabotage for decades. And honestly, we won't get to it all in this chapter. Even in the darkest of days, though, when I may feel confronted with that void of self-destruction, I choose to meet myself with courageous compassion. Rather than fearing the fall, I trust the innate treasures of transformation, knowing the deeper I dive, the higher I fly, as proven time and time again. It's a lot. And that's okay. Some of you might find the experience of depression or suicide a familiar journey for you. Others of you might not connect with that, and I hope that's, your path. For those of you who do have that intimate experience with depression and suicide, I really want to invite in an awareness here that it is not an invitation to commit suicide. I see depression as an invitation to let go of the limiting beliefs, the thoughts, the stories, the identities that have caged us in this confining and restricting box, which is not authentic to our unique expression of the divine that is within. And it's an invitation, much like a serpent. Oh, you can't see it behind me. There's actually, you can just see it there, the little bit of, that's a snake skin there. And you know how snakes, they often shed their skin, and sometimes they'll shed the whole lot. Sometimes they'll wriggle out a little, and they'll, try and get more and more and more. The invitation I feel with depression is to let go of all of that. And I speak a little bit more to that in Isis, Mother of Magic, the 4th multi-author book. So you can tune in there if you wish. Let's continue. Homecoming through a higher calling. The year is 2012 when I am officially introduced to yoga. I'm 17 and in my first year of living abroad in England, traveling Europe and staying with my auntie, Nerida, in Switzerland. My family isn't seeing the best of me during this time, as I'm in yet another pit of depression, playing out self-sabotaging patterns and programs of self-destruction through arduous addictions. Still, they are kind enough to practice loving me unconditionally. Among the midst of this density, Nerida invites me to join her for a yoga class in the local studio. Admittedly, I feel apprehensive, but ultimately think, what have I got to lose? I may as well give it a go. It's an astonishing autumn morning in Switzerland, and the studio, while only petite, feels so grand, gazing over the undulating vineyards. The scent of the incense permeating through the sun-kissed and cozy room still lives within me. There are only women attending, and all of them older than me. I can barely speak a word of Italian, the local language in this part of Switzerland, but it doesn't matter. Observing the teacher and learning to trust my inner knowing, plus Nerida's occasional translating, I find myself able to flow with the majority of the practices. Headstands feel a little intimidating at this time, but I still enjoy exploring as much as I am comfortable to. Words are not enough to fully describe the sensations I experienced in my being through this nurturing yoga practice and the activations I received afterwards as I hiked back to the house. I will always hold this moment and majestic memory, which lives in the visceral sensations of my body, dearly in my heart. I was home, perhaps for the first time in my life. I later returned to Dorset, southwest England, hungry and thirsty for yoga's ancient wisdom. I research online and practice daily in the tiny spaces of the room where I was staying. Returning to Australia, I have a life-changing conversation with Bella, a beloved family friend, who is exponential in my life. Our families are water skiing together in the summer when Bella shares that she is enrolled for her yoga teacher training with My Health Yoga. And this further ignites my inspiration, and soon after I enroll too. So I want to frame here that actually yoga's been with me right from the beginning. And those of you who have journeyed into yoga teacher training, certainly in my training, they shared with us, if you're coming to this practice in this lifetime and desiring to, be a teacher of this particular art, very likely you've journeyed with this for multiple lifetimes. And I feel this is true for me, especially given that as a kid, I was often practicing advanced yoga techniques without consciously being aware. It's just naturally what my body was feeling intuitively called to. And it wasn't until I did my yoga teacher training that I actually recognized, like, whoa, that's some pretty advanced practices that I was, trying as a kid. It's kind of been with me forever. And it's definitely, it absolutely was the epitome of my homecoming, and it continues to call me home. Whenever I sway from my practice, I'm guided back. Whenever I'm swaying from my breath, I'm guided back. Whenever I'm swaying from my body, I'm guided back. So yeah, it holds a very dear space in my heart and always will. Fast forward to 2018, and after 4.5 years of living abroad, I am suddenly and strongly called to return to my Australian roots. I then discover Stacey from Inspired Kids Yoga. And before I even finish enrolling in my children's yoga teacher training, I have heart awakening tears trickling down my cheeks. Thereafter is 117 hours of tremendous training with Stacey, which is exponential in validating and regulating my inner toddler to teen and all that they endured over the years. Further giving light to why I have always felt and continue to feel so passionately alive when working with toddlers to teens. So I just want to frame here, what I mean by this is that my kids' yoga teacher training was transformational for me, first and foremost, because it meant that I was able to go back into different phases and stages of my life, right from the toddler to, or even infancy, actually, from infancy to teens, and to really integrate different parts of me that had been lost along the way due to various experiences that I'd had that were confronting. And in shamanism, we refer to this as like, when a trauma happens, the soul fragments itself. And so in order to feel whole in oneself, we work with what shamanism refers to as soul retrieval. And my kids' yoga teacher training was much like this, a soul retrieval to gather these parts of me. It's like a mother gathering all her babes and bringing them close to her and taking them with her on their journey so that no one is left behind, no one is abandoned or rejected or outcasted. We're welcoming all parts of ourselves. And this is what my children's yoga teacher training in particular gifted me. And then what a beautiful blessing to have been able to share that knowledge and wisdom for others. And I really love working with toddlers and teens in particular, but I've been blessed to work with all ages, and no doubt will continue. So yeah, felt to share that with you. Let's continue. Before we do, though, I actually want to invite you to contemplate for your own journey. What are those pivotal moments, especially if you're someone who's been caught up in, maybe self-sabotaging or self-destructive behaviors? This could be addictions of any nature. It could be, depression as an example. And just see, are there pivotal points in your life that have helped you? Maybe you were going down that track of self-sabotage or self-destruction, and something popped up for you and it just shifted you a 180, and you went in a completely different direction, maybe totally unexpected, and yet it's brought you more whole to your authentic true self. I wonder what's there for you. And remember, you can pause at any point through this journey and just write whatever's here for you. Breathe and be, and then come back. Unraveling of revelations. So 9 months and 350 hours of my first yoga teacher training was truly a purification of paradigms. There are many fun memories of this time. 2 in particular were powerfully pivotal, directing me deeper into self-discovery during the past 9 years, especially, which is 10 now, especially delving into parts of me that I kept hidden, even from myself, for over 23 years. One of which eventuated during an adjustment workshop. So before I go into this, I just want to frame that, our bodies and our minds are incredibly clever at hiding bits of information from us. So what I'm saying here is that, I was very young when sexual abuse first came into my life, and being so young, it's not safe to experience such a thing. So we dissociate from our body. As we come back, we don't know what's going on inside of us. It's a bit of a shit show. It's not feeling like a haven or a home. And with that, we often leave those parts of ourselves, just like I was talking about the soul fragmentation. And so when we dissipate ourselves and segregate ourselves, it's information like what we experienced as a child is often hidden from us, even through our childhood, teens, and into adulthood. And it takes a lot of inner work to be willing to see those parts of ourselves and to meet them and to love them unconditionally. And, especially given that my inner child was also threatened that she'd be killed if she ever told anyone, you can see why I would keep this information hidden from myself for like 23 plus years. And then just as I was coming into yoga and a wealth of wisdom that was available for me, different tools and techniques from various medicines and modalities, I was being prepped and prepared to receive more and more information, because it is stored within the visceral cellular level of our bodies until we can't bring awareness to it and then clear it. And then we can start to activate our DNA, and we can bring forth, much richer codes within our DNA to bring more purity and presence through our breath into our bodies. So yeah, I just wanted to frame that before we continue. Okay, so in this adjustment workshop in my yoga teacher training, we are partnered up and guided into Trikonasana, or triangle pose. I am positioned against the wall for support. The lady I'm working with ever so lightly and lovingly gently guides my left hip into true alignment for my body in this particular pose. The floodgates open. And I am overwhelmed with this heart-wrenching tears. I leave the room not feeling comfortable to show vulnerability yet, especially with a room full of people staring at me and the dark cloud that now fills my auric field. I can barely hold myself in the density and intensity weighing over me. The tormenting and traumatizing horror in my heart feels too immense. Our teacher comes to check on me, to hold space and listen. I sense she knows exactly what has come into my awareness. Still, I can't seem to voice this, even with her. Instead, I push her loving support away and choose to bear the burden of my own. Again, a pattern I had become very good at playing. And admittedly, this was probably my favorite teacher in my yoga teacher training for that particular course. And she had such a loving presence about her and such a non-judgmental, unconditionally loving essence to her. And yet I still didn't feel safe to share this information with her at that time of my life. And I remember so clearly, even now, how dark that cloud was. It just like all encompassing through my auric field. And I want to invite that in again, because if you're in a state where you're just feeling that doom and gloom, there's like that heavy cloud weighing over you. If you don't already have conscious awareness of what that is and where that's coming from in you, I invite you to go into that to see what is trying to be shown for you. And likewise, if you've got maybe memories of parts of your childhood or your journey in life where that has been there, again, if you don't have the presence and the awareness, inviting you to explore that a little further. Or if there's your children or children around you who are in that dark space, rather than judging them, how can we meet them, whether they be external children or our inner child? How can we meet these inner and outer children with that loving presence, with that unconditional acceptance, and that like that really safe space within you and all around you to invite that communication for them to be able to show up and share. Remember, this could be your inner child, to be able to show up and share with you what has happened. Why are you feeling this way? Let's explore how we can help support you. And it's such a good pattern that we play out, isn't it? Like feeling like we've got to do it all on our own, feeling like no one's going to be there to support me, and no one can see me, no one can hear me, no one gets me. Like these are all limiting beliefs and stories that I have played out for so many years of my life. And in real honesty, I'm still practicing to step into that vulnerability, which takes a fuckload of courage to show up and share whatever's here for us, and to be seen and heard by another, to be witnessed in that. It takes a lot, and I really celebrate anyone for leaning into that, because I know it's confronting and it's challenging, and yet it's so incredibly liberating. And it's also brings so much validation as well. It liberates us, those stories, out of ourselves. It validates what we've experienced and what we're maybe still experiencing. And it allows us to regulate our nervous systems back into a state of equilibrium. And this is what I'm so passionate about in all the work that I do: liberate, validate, regulate, the three. We're nearly there. I know this has gone a lot longer, but I'm really enjoying being able to share with you more than just the chapter itself. So I really hope this is valuable for you as well. What I didn't fully comprehend at that time was the enormity of what I was actually unlocking in my Svadhisthana, my sacral chakra. So that's, for anyone who doesn't know, that's just below the navel and just above the root chakra. So this is really connecting us to our feminine essence, which lives within all of us. It's that creativity, it's that pleasure place, it's intuition as well. It's that feminine flow. It also relates a lot to the sexual energy and our relationships with others. So with what I was unlocking in my sacral chakra, it was leading me back to my roots, all those years of childhood abuse, and the disturbing memory flooding through me at that particular moment in this adjustment workshop when I was in Trikonasana, triangle pose, and when this partner that I was working with, she just gently guided my hip into place. And what unlocked for me was this memory of where I'd actually been drugged and raped by this teenage boy while I was coming in and out of consciousness during that experience. And that was a school after a formal after party. And that was when I was in year 12. I later learned I wasn't the only girl who had suffered such hideous assault at this particular party. Yeah, it was a pretty nasty party actually, and yeah, there were other people that experienced some stuff there too. So coming back to this memory and what was surfacing for me during that adjustment workshop, I feel spine tingling iciness as I lay on the damp and cold grass this winter's evening. In the moments where I'm coming to, I see we're away from everyone else. I see the adults gathering in the house nearby, unaware and indifferent to the disturbing behaviors wreaking havoc. I don't know how to scream for help or to make him stop. My body feels too weak from the effects of this drug and alcohol concoction, creating chaos in my system. The back of my head aches too from when I hit the ground after being pushed by this pig of a human. I hear him say, "Cheers for the fuck," as he walks away, leaving me on the icy cold grass, continuing to come in and out of consciousness. Eventually, I come to. The majority of people are already gone, including the friends I'm supposed to get a lift home with. I'm delirious from this disturbance, stumbling for my phone to call my mum to come and get me. In the wee hours of this now winter's morning, my mum makes the arduous trek to collect me. No surprises, she's unimpressed with the call, but like any loving mother, she picks me up regardless. I feel so ashamed, disgusted, embarrassed, and I don't know how to tell her what had happened. Instead, I accept her anger towards me and suppress this most disturbing ordeal. And again, for anyone who's connecting with their inner child, in a teen or inner child, or with your perhaps teenager or children, if there's something they're not voicing with you, if they're hiding, if they're shy and ashamed, if they're not letting themselves be seen or heard, like invite a safe space for them to be seen and heard, because there's probably, rather than like criticizing them or judging them or ridiculing them all the time, it's probably a really fucking good reason that they're showing up in that particular way. And this is something I'm really passionate about bringing awareness to within our society, is just how often, especially teenagers, they're not seen and they're not heard, and they're constantly judged and criticized and ridiculed and like put in a box, often by teachers or parents, society in general. And it's like, imagine if we could create a world where they were safe to be seen and to be heard in their most vulnerable truths, in what's happening for them in those moments. Imagine what a different world we'd be creating for them, but for all. Yeah. Okay. So after my yoga teacher training, and in particular this adjustment workshop, which brought this memory of being drugged and raped to the surface, I actually decided to tell my family. So that was like a few years later that I told my family. And there were mixed responses, mostly supportive, but at times the blame was pushed onto me as though it was my fault. It was important and necessary to recognize my recklessness on this particular evening, but absolutely essential to also acknowledge that this was not my fault. And in no way was this consensual. Raping anybody, especially one that is coming in and out of consciousness, is never okay in any circumstances. Even if that person had initially given consent, that would still not be okay. And I just recently went through another experience where this particular person who was not supporting me when I shared, hey, I was drugged and raped when I was in year 12. This is what happened. I'm just letting you know. And this particular person in my life at that time was, just pushing the blame onto me, saying it was all my fault. And yes, it was important to be self-responsible and self-accountable. And I had already moved through all of that within myself through my yoga teacher training in particular. And it was also essential that I validated that part of me that knows that actually raping someone is not okay. Raping someone who's coming in and out of consciousness is not okay. Treating a woman or a man or a child like that is not okay in any circumstance, even if it was initially consensual and someone said stop, if someone said no, if someone was coming in and out of consciousness. Like, it's pretty obvious that that's not okay, isn't it? But yeah, this person, I recently had a confrontation with them, and yeah, there's still very much of that belief that it was my fault. And I'm very aware that we're co-creating our experiences in life. So again, I am self-responsible, I am self-accountable, but that is shit that I don't need to be carrying. Like how that boy chose to treat me in that moment, that's all his stuff. And this is something that I want to highlight, because for anyone who has had experiences similar to my own, we're often carrying the energetic weight, the psychological disturbance and density of our thought patterns and programs that are playing on repeat, as well as the emotional disturbance and even physical dis-ease from the so-called perpetrators. So whoever was in that experience with us, unless we bring conscious awareness to that experience and truly heal and integrate from that experience, we're carrying all their shit, all their stories, all their shadow. It's not actually ours to bear the burden of. And I really want to highlight that, because there's so many people out there feeling that weight that I'm speaking of, physically, emotionally, psychologically, energetically, and it's not yours. Some of it will be, maybe pieces of the puzzle, but it's not entirely yours. Oftentimes it's passed down generation to generation, lifetime after lifetime. Mm. And again, I speak extensively to all of that in Jaguar Medicine. That's our third multi-author book. So you can tune in with that as well. So it turns out this guy who I had this experience of being raped by was actually a family friend. Our dads had gone to school together. And my parents felt uncomfortable about the idea, but asked if I wanted to press charges. And unfortunately, I dismissed his disgusting behavior. Now wishing I'd said yes to putting him in his place. Yes and no. I don't know that I really agree with that. And this is the thing, it's completely divine discernment for each individual, because some people will feel the need to press charges and you know, hold that person accountable for their actions. And I feel that that is important. I also come from the belief of trusting in karmic balance. And yeah, so that's what I'll say about that. It does sadden me, though, that we live in a society which often promotes rape culture and dismisses the disturbing truth of what is playing out so commonly for many children and adults, especially behind closed doors. I choose to no longer agree with a society that sweeps confronting conversations like this under the rug simply because it's uncomfortable to face the ferociousness of these torturesome truths. And I will be speaking a lot more to this in our next multi-author book that's coming up later in the year, Fierce as Fuck. Yep. And no doubt through my first solo book journey as well. So there's lots to tune in with. Okay, we're really close to the end now. Let's do it. Out of darkness, the light is born. My childhood, sorry, because I have this image of a lotus flower, and how the lotus flower, it, for those who don't know, it grows from the depths of the murky waters, reaching for the light until it blossoms and blooms. And this is how I feel about traumas. You know, yes, it's incredibly confronting, but it's an opportunity for us to grow towards the light and to receive the treasure of this life and what it's truly here to gift for us and what we are here to gift for all. Okay. My childhood connection with the earth and her medicines grew. I began studying aromatherapy and Bach flower remedies while living in England. That was between 2014 and 2016, both of which have been and still are significant in surfacing that which needs to be brought into the light with love. Later in 2016, while traveling India, I found myself curious to connect with the plant medicine of ceremonial cacao, as well as rebirth breath work. These ancient medicines and modalities have been and still are next level in liberation. I continued to enrich, expand, and evolve my connection with Mama Cacao and breathwork through an opportunity I was later gifted, which was to live and work and volunteer in Denmark for 11 months in 2017. During this time, I was regularly braving rebirth breathwork and communing closely with cacao, even supporting facilitation of ceremonies with a beloved brother, Mango, who I journeyed with for 4 months while living in India. And it's so very mysterious, isn't it? How the world interweaves us to unite and reunite, because we journeyed together 2 months in the north of India, 2 months in the south. I just happened to bump into him in the south of India. So I continued the ceremonies of, they were breathwork, cacao, ecstatic dance experiences, fucking phenomenal. And then I went back to Australia. He went on to Spain, I believe. And then we ended up both in Denmark around the same time. So that's where our journey continued. And it's just miraculous, isn't it? Yeah, so my relationship with cacao and breathwork allowed me to completely cremate any and all arduous addictions, which previously had had a hold over me. Perhaps most pivotal, the destruction of depression, which often tried to silence and suppress me from expressing my light in this life. So, yes, I will. Yeah, I really see how pivotal cacao and breathwork have been for me in my life. And they have helped me shift dramatically and drastically the relationship I had with various addictions. Landing back in my Australian roots, I explored my practitioner training of emotional freedom technique and also felt inspired to seek out another mentor, which is Samantha J, who's also featured in Magdalene Rising. And I certified with Samantha as a level 3 facilitator of cacao ceremonies. And then just this year, I completed my 2-year initiation with her as a facilitator of the Sacred Feminine Medicine Wheel. So my connection and collaboration with varying medicines and modalities led me on quite the journey, both within but also around the world over the past now 10 years. There have been deep and dark dives into murky waters, like what I was talking about with that lotus flower, of ancient traumas which have been suppressed and silenced for decades, even generations. Diving into such dense and intense places within myself ultimately leads me to soar higher. So, yeah, I feel Mother Jaguar here, because Mother Jaguar is really like a master of different dynamics. She can run, she can swim, she can climb. And this is what I feel in what I'm trying to say here is like sometimes we've got to dive deep into the shit, into the shadow, into the stories. But in doing so, it actually allows us to liberate all of that density and intensity and to be able to soar far and wide. So yeah, I'm just feeling Mother Jaguar's playfulness of being able to explore different terrains, both within ourselves or around us as well. Creating space between me and these burdens, I now see from a more expansive perspective, much like an eagle. So eagles, they can really see so far and wide, but they can also see that finite detail. So from this higher perspective, one is able to see, feel, and know that these experiences that I've had in life, while traumatizing, are actually happening for me. And the same is true for you. If you've had some traumatizing experiences in life, it is happening for you, not to you. Happening for us, not to us. And this allows us to shift from that state of victim mentality into victor of our life story, to alchemize the pain into power, wounds into wisdom, and traumas into treasures. We are able to cultivate courageous compassion for ourselves, first and foremost, and for those around us, including the perceived perpetrators. That one takes a lot, but it's possible. Yeah. And I write it here as even those who may have contributed to the creation, because remember, it's a co-created experience of chaos. Through these heart awakening medicines and modalities, one is able to audaciously adventure home into the enchanted heart garden within. Even after negotiating and navigating a world of wounding, which often deters one from their physical body and life, we are educated to embrace and embody our most empowered self, creating resounding ripples of tremendous transformation across multiple timelines, lifetimes, generations. We are enriched, evolving into the embodiment of metta, loving kindness, compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude, first for self, then for all. We begin to believe, see, feel, and know that we are worthy of courageously creating a life which resembles our heart's wildest dreams. We are reignited into our innate gifts of dreaming into being, creating heaven and earth weaved as one, beyond any binds that would try to limit our light. So I'll leave you here with the inspired words of Brené Brown. Let us embrace and embody a strong back, a soft front, and a wild heart. Thank you so much for journeying with me through my chapter from Magdalene Rising. It has been a pleasure to share this with you, and I really hope it's felt much more valuable for you to receive this transmission through spoken and written words, as opposed to just one or the other. I feel it brings a little bit more of a dynamic and expansive experience. And I really invite you, as we bring close now to, oh, that was cool. I saw 11111. 5 ones on the clock. But yeah, as we bring close to this now, I really invite you to just be with your journal. If you need to write down anything that are shifting through you, any revelations or reflections that are here for you. And most importantly, breathe and be. Thank you, and bountiful blessings to each of you. Namaste.